It's that time of the year again where we revisit the Object 279E, and of course this vehicle is one of the most disgusting tier 10 premiums that is on World of Tanks PC. However, this is a very different story on World of Tanks console, not because it is innately so much worse, but just purely based on the fact that the armor model is slightly different to that of the PC. Of course, this vehicle, a reward vehicle on the PC version, it is in no way a reward version on the console. It is down to either purchasing it with free XP or as part of a earn operation a long time ago at this point, and hopefully coming back into the game sometime soon. But what makes the Object 279E so special in the game itself? Well, there are a few reasons. The key reason is that the frontal armor of this vehicle is one of the best that you'll ever probably see in the game. Now, unfortunately, the T-54 lightweight there on our team pushing into us, but what I find with the 279 is that you can get into some really disgusting positions where the opponents just will not be able to do anything to you, and the only opponent that really you have to fear in this vehicle is obviously the enemy artillery, because like every tank in the game, they are not protected from those. So the key thing with the 279E is that there are a few weak points, the main one being if you are on a ridgeline, they can shoot up into the lower plate, even though there isn't one on this vehicle, but they can effectively shoot into the underside of your vehicle if you crest a ridgeline with this vehicle. However, you do have a lot of spaced armor in the form of the tracks, which stops heat rounds, so there's some counters to it. And remember as well as the fact that this gets the kind of basically no lower plate, so there's no weak point there. It also gets 440 alpha damage that you can kick out back to the opponent that's probably likely just bounced off of you, so that's always really nice as well. So we're now just trying to get into a position where we're not going to get YOLO'd by a load of tanks, and unfortunately the enemy team have won the eastern side of Overlord, and this is a map we probably don't feature a whole lot on this this kind of channel, and that's probably just because I don't get it that often, to be honest. But as you're seeing here, we're racking up damage on the move, and that's because the dispersion of the 279E is actually really good. It means that you don't really get YOLO'd a whole lot, where you can't then like turn around and deal damage to the opponents. Now this Manticore has decided he's just going to come over the hill. Unfortunately, we don't have any tank destroyers in the back that are able to shoot at the Manticore, which is a little bit disappointing. But with the AMX 1390 and the Manticore around here, and I believe the Chili clan or Chili, I don't know what you want to call it, but I'm pretty sure that they're not awful players, so we're kind of a little bit worried as to how it's going to end up. But luckily we can actually free aim on this game, unlike probably 99% of people. So we put a nice round into him, and with the Manticore now trying to move across, we try and snap a little shot into him, but unfortunately it doesn't go our way. But what we can do from this point now is actually go for the Manticore now, and we hit him very nicely. So this tank, really accurate for a heavy tank, and it's also super good armor from the front. Of course, as soon as people can get the rear of your vehicle, then it doesn't end up being very good. But one thing that I didn't like there was that we somehow missed the T110E5 from the back when literally our entire aiming circle was on the back of him. I wasn't quite sure how that ended up happening, but there you go, it is what it is. So it's kind of difficult position to be in at this point. I can either go through the centre, in which case we may get YOLO'd by both vehicles from both sides, or I can kind of just crest this ridgeline, finish off the Waffenträger Panzer IV, which we do very nicely, and then help out this Jagdtiger with the enemies in the Manticore, and of course this TD who's just been taken out. But the Manticore now pushing backwards, we try and put a shell into him, but it doesn't go our way, and unfortunately he gets away with it so far. There is still a Object 260 on the enemy team who is sat out in the open. He actually does manage to pen us. Looks like he hit underneath of our vehicle, like we said about. There's also the FV4005 on the enemy team, who is definitely a bit of a pain if we're deciding to kind of go forward. So you see me here cresting behind the house, so the Object 260 can't get my lower plate, and that way we can kind of come around and we can put some shells into him. Of course, the Object 260 is a video coming soon, so stay tuned for the other Tier 10 Soviet heavy tank that is slightly different in most regards to the 279E, and that's because the 260 is a hell of a lot faster, and in general it's just one of those vehicles that's a little bit better in most cases. Now there is the enemy T125 who did escape our shell from the behind earlier, so we're going to go towards him, along with the fact that there is the FV4005 who can definitely pen the upper plate of the 279E with its AP rounds. With Hesh this is never going to happen, but it can considerably damage us if he does even just hit us with Hesh. But at this point we're just trying to get some shells into him, take down his hit points as low as possible, and of course if we can do that against him now, it means we don't have to then try and bait a shell later on. But the problem we're having here is that the gun depression is not possible against the T125, but at this point it's just time to go. I'm seeing that I can apparently hit the T125. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we're not able to hit him, but we'll go in and help this heavy tank out. Hopefully we can push the T125 and get away with removing him without any more of our teammates getting taken out. But we hit the T125 in the side of the turret. Remember, if someone does turn the side of their turret to you, it's probably way better than trying to pen the angled front. I know that a lot of people try and do that, and of course that is probably very likely, but we try now and go for the lower plate of the E5. Should have probably gone for the upper plate. The FV4005 then decides to try and YOLO us, but unfortunately for the E5 here, he can't get away with bouncing another round, and we put one into the lower plate of the vehicle and finish him off. Now there is just one FV4005 left alive on the game, along with the two light tanks, including that Manticore who YOLO'd us earlier, so it would be nice if we could take him out. There is one other light tank on the enemy team, including the WZ, I believe it is, at the end, who actually finishes off our Guardian STG, and then he proceeds to come over to this side, and for some reason he's camping this far at the back. I was surprised that he was actually over here, and he didn't try and help out the E5 at all, so we try and go for a shot on him. He obviously goes into the bush, which I don't blame him, and then we're just trying to now crest this ridgeline. I was surprised that the Manticore didn't actually come out and try and support. I wasn't sure where he'd gone, maybe he got trapped or something, I don't know, but yeah, unfortunately for the WZ, he might get one more into me, but no more after that, since we shut him down, picking up 6,300 combined, or 6,300 actual damage, and of course with the assistance up to 7,000 combined. So quite a nice game. Obviously it's not the most outrageous. I'm sure that some people have had 10,000 damage plus in the 279E, but yeah, it wasn't a bad result for us. So we're now moving forward towards wherever this Manticore is. You saw that he actually targeted us, which means he looked at us, which means he's within the view range of this vehicle, but we just have no idea where he's going to be, and he could just sit and try and escape, which unfortunately for us, he does just hide for the rest of the game, and we cannot find him. I do try and track him down, but our team caps anyway. But nonetheless, the victory screen right here, and we pick up a very nice victory. The VK1001P picks up the top spot, apparently, having done 2,200 damage, and we did nearly 7,000 combined, so I don't quite know how that works, but I'm sure it's just because he's a tier 8 vehicle and a tier 10 game. But overall, really, really good game for the 279E. Let's jump into another one on a slightly different map where you have to use a little bit more gun depression. Of course, the hilly map is indeed El Haloof, and El Haloof is a map that, I mean, you don't have to use the hills, but if you do, you can kind of get some really, really good results. But the whole premise of this video in particular, or this replay I should say actually, is to showcase the aggression that you can use with the 279E, and why people always kind of forget that this vehicle is super hard to reliably pen if someone's using it correctly and they're kind of moving in a way that makes it very difficult to hit the cupolas on top of this vehicle, because they are a weak point. You can be penned in the cupolas, and it is the one weak point that I would highly recommend everyone go for if you don't already know them. Because it's super easy to pen. It's just a case of will you hit them or not, and if you've got a little bit of aim on this game, then you'll be able to hit them if your shell actually goes where you aim it, and that's exactly what the 279E's weak point is, and that's kind of really where I'd go for. If you can't actually hit the cupolas of the vehicle, I would typically just leave. I wouldn't bother trying to fight this thing, hold down or anything like that, or hiding the lower plate and looking down on you, because hitting the cupolas is impossible, as well as trying to hit that lower plate is impossible. So yeah, it's just a case of then leaving, or potentially just trying to get a shot into the side of the vehicle, because the side armor of the 279E is absolutely trash, like to the point where it's absolutely pointless you even trying to get a shell into him. Unfortunately, we don't manage to hit the I7, because of course right as we get into a line to shoot him, there's a little raise in the terrain, which means we miss him. Now the E50M on the enemy team tries to shoot at us. Unfortunately for him, that's not going to work very well. And at this point there is the heavy tank on our team who's pushed up quite aggressively. I mean, it's not necessarily a terrible idea, but it's kind of difficult to judge considering it's so early on in the game and there could be the entire enemy team around here. So I never usually push down into the dip, which is just in front of me at this early on in the game, because you never know what the enemy team are going to do, and often there are some pretty YOLO wagon players on the game where they just go straight off in even though it's not worth it for them, and you can end up just getting YOLO by like 5 or 6 different tanks. Luckily for our teammate here, the 60TP is about to get farmed from the side, and we bounce a lovely round there. He obviously couldn't get the lower plate of our vehicle. Now we can just farm him, because ultimately it's just about trying to get the rounds into him, take him out, and then we can kind of move on with our own game. You can see me here just literally trying to angle the upper plate because he looked like he was going to shoot it. The E50M then on the enemy team is then trying to punish us here. I should have probably realised that I was actually on an angled slope, so this wasn't the best idea for me to be on, because that means that he's now looking at a flatter version of the upper plate, which obviously is easier to pen. And with the E50M's APCR rounds that it gets as premium, it can be a little bit difficult to avoid taking some damage, and we're just taking damage that we needlessly need to take. So we finish off the E50M. There's now the I7 behind us, who's like just YOLO'd off down into the dip, and we've got a light tank in support. Now the I7 is going to struggle quite a bit against this vehicle because the penetration of the IS is just not anywhere near as good. You can see there he actually tracks us, which is something that is kind of annoying about the 279E, because you do have 4 sets of tracks on this vehicle, but it will save you more than it will hinder you in your game. So now it's 10 versus 6. We've now got the enemy team just basically sat in base, and we've done 2,700 damage, and we've pushed forward quite a lot, but it's not necessarily the worst damage game in the world. You'd probably be a little bit miffed if this was like your third mark game and you were stuck on 2,000 damage at this end, but there's still quite a bit of damage left in the game for us to farm, so we're hoping that we can do that, just trying to get some easy shells off into some of the opponents. Now there is a type 5 or a type 4 sat in front of us on full hit points, so we'll hopefully be able to deal some damage to him. He is indeed on full hit points. It is a type 5. We put one into the lower plate using the heat rounds of the vehicle, and then of course we get missed by the enemy RT for about 500. Then the type 5 comes around, who obviously doesn't have to aim whatsoever, and we are basically now in a little fight with this big ogre. And of course we know the weak points, the angled areas, the bits that become unangled, etc., and we put some rounds into him. I'm now just trying to get into a bit better of an RT safe position so we don't have to take any more of his shells. And then for some reason the Object 430U on the enemy team thinks it's a brilliant idea to try and YOLO a 279E. Obviously it wasn't, and there is just now the type 5 on the enemy team left alive. who subsequently, I believe, gets hit by our artillery piece in just a second, but it's a little bit of a spoiler, I guess. But at this point, it's now just a case of just trying to find out where the opponents are and just pushing forward to try and get a little bit of extra damage, because we picked up now 4,800, and there goes the Type 5 by the T92. It's quite a lucky shot, I guess, considering he was just behind. I guess maybe there's a better angle. The Leopard 1 tries to run on World of Tanks console. That's not actually allowed. You cannot run on World of Tanks. So yep, he's gone out of the game, back to the garage, which we absolutely love. And it's just now the T92 on the enemy team and a Death Chariot, which is the tier 8 premium tank that was recently showcased here on the channel that you can see if you really want to. We bounce around off of him. I'm very wary that the T92 could finish us off at any point. But yeah, at this point we're just trying to get a easy shot into the Death Chariot, which we don't manage to do, unfortunately. And we do end up getting stuck on the amount of damage that we're on until the end of the game, as the T92 steals that one, or steals the rest of the damage on that one, and then actually subsequently finishes off the enemy T92 as well. So yes, the victory screen of course arriving now, and we have completed that game with 5,219 damage and 372 assistance. Not a bad round, but you can definitely see this vehicle doing a lot more damage if there's more opponents that you can fight. Unfortunately, we ran out of opponents at that point, and of course, hopefully you did enjoy the review of the Object 279E and the showcase of the gameplay. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in joining me for some other tier 10 premium gameplay reviews, much like this one, we have indeed just recently done the WZ-111 Quillin, which will be on the left of the screen, and on the right hand side of the screen the T95 Chieftain, which is a fantastic vehicle. It's both amazing in their own right, and hopefully you'll join me there in those, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Goodbye.